Our last but not least is Ben Begleiter, a research analyst for Unite Here Local 54, the Casino Workers Union in Atlantic City. I think you've been with Unite Here since 2004, Ben. My notes say your interest in tax increment financing began in 2008 when Revel applied for tax increment financing. And I'm interested to hear, so we sort of got a taste of Millville about what's possible and what some of the good things are about tax increment financing. I'm interested to hear your take on what is probably, I think, universally agreed to as the worst idea that's come out of the tax increment financing. Although, I don't know, Xanadu might be giving you a run for your money now. So, Ben Begleiter.
Thank you. I guess I want to start by congratulating New Jersey Policy Perspective on this report. It's an excellent report with a series of laudable recommendations. I also want to thank Sarah and Naomi for their help at the beginning of our trying to understand TIF, for the invaluable information that you provided us with. It's also really nice to hear from Millville, where it sounds like there are, how can I phrase this, responsible public officials who deal with the question of TIF funding in a broad, thoughtful process. The way I've seen it happen 3 times in Atlantic City in the 2 years that I've lived there, and in all of those occasions, the developer has shown up at City Council with an idea, and it gets passed without thinking it through. So let's talk, I'm going to talk for a couple minutes about the Revel ERG application, and also the naked power play by the state legislature to deny voters a say on this application. So Revel is a $2.5 billion casino project that was begun in 2007. It's owned by the investment bank Morgan Stanley. Morgan Stanley began building before it had all of its financing in place, and when the financial crisis happened, funding for speculative projects like casinos dried up. By November of 2009, Morgan Stanley had completed the exterior of the casino at a cost of about $1.2 billion, but had no money to complete the interior. So Morgan Stanley's casino company needed about another $1 billion to finish the job. The company decided to apply for $350 million in ERG funding, $50 million in local for infrastructure improvements, and $300 million in state funding to work on the interior. To get the ERG funding, Morgan Stanley needed Atlantic City to approve both the local and the state applications. The approvals came at a special city council meeting, which they claimed they needed in order to get on the next local finance board agenda meeting. And then they dropped off the local finance board meeting agenda, and the local portion of that has never seen the light of day since. After the fact, the Wall Street Journal wrote, and I quote, "Several city council members said they had heard about the program only just before they were to vote on it and expressed confusion about what they had voted for." One of the city council members came to us after the fact so that we could explain to him what he had voted on. Wall Street analysts suggested that Revel would force 2 or more of the existing older casinos to close. If this was true, providing Morgan Stanley's casino company with TIF financing would result in less tax revenue for the state, by our estimates suggest about $2 to $5 million a year, and fewer and lower paying jobs. Our position was that if Revel could get independent financing to finish their project, so be it, but that the state couldn't afford $300 million, and it had no business providing a subsidy that would force other businesses to close. We began a referendum petition to put the application for $300 million on the ballot for voters of Atlantic City to decide. We submitted the application on the Friday before Martin Luther King weekend. That Tuesday morning, Senators Lesniak and Whalen introduced legislation to retroactively bar referendum on ERG funding. This was S920. And this piece of legislation moved like lightning. In just over a month, it passed completely in the Senate, and a month after that, it passed the Assembly. With one exception in the Assembly, Democrats in both the Senate and the Assembly were ready to deny voters throughout the state any say on ERG in order to prevent our petition. In contrast, almost half of the Republicans in the Senate either voted against the measure or did not vote. The only voice of dissent within the Senate was that of Senator Dougherty, a conservative Republican from Hunterdon County, I believe. At the same time the bill was moving through the legislature, we allied ourselves with like-minded groups, both conservative and liberal. Sierra Club, Steve Lonigan's Americans for Prosperity, and Liberty and Prosperity, and began a campaign to raise awareness of the issue. We actually had a rally outside of Morgan Stanley's Jersey City headquarters. That was us and Steve Lonigan. Steve knows how to get press. He's very good at it. By late March, a poll done by Fairleigh Dickinson University said that residents of New Jersey opposed the idea of giving TIF financing to Morgan Stanley's casino by a margin of 2-1. Shortly after that, Morgan Stanley announced it was selling its stake in Revel and writing off $932 million. At the end of April, Revel formally withdrew its application. Given that Revel needed over $1 billion to finish the project, where was it planning to get the rest of the money? The answer: a Chinese government-owned bank had a tentative deal to fund the rest. So to recap, at a time when the state is facing record deficits and cutting spending on education and aid to municipalities, our Democratic legislators were gung-ho to pass a bill to prevent citizens from having meaningful input in the TIF process in order to grease the wheels for a Morgan Stanley-owned casino company to get $300 million in tax rebates in order to make the deal more palatable to a Chinese government-owned bank. Got it? In the process, based on our analysis, the state would have ended up with less sales tax because Revel would have likely forced the closure of 2 or more casinos. One further indication of how bad a deal this was is the recent sale in Atlantic City of the first casino, Resorts. It sold for a mere $35 million. Now you as an investor, imagine yourself with a spare $1 billion in your pocket. You're going out to invest. Resorts, which has 900 hotel rooms, sells for $35 million. Are you willing to put up $1 billion to finish a 1,900 room hotel? So the final point I want to make is this. The bill, as amended by S920, makes it virtually impossible for the public to have any meaningful input into a state ERG. Because the amendments stripped out the need for local approval, the first time that citizens might know that a particular application is pending is when it appears on the EDA's agenda. And I know most citizens of our state actively troll the EDA's website to find out what's on their agenda. Furthermore, the decision about how to allocate potentially hundreds of millions of dollars in state tax dollars is left in the hands of an unelected and unaccountable board. Thank you.